Hello, welcome to my channel, video, whatever. My name is Matthew P. Holbert. Um, I know nothing and I am nobody. This is starting out at least as a kind of a diary entry or something. I don't know. But for some reason recently, whenever I've witnessed acts of kindness, it's brought me to a point of tears. It's kind of strange. Um, I'm a relatively emotional and passionate person in general, but it's stricken me sort of as a uncontrollable or involuntary reaction to something that I might want to document this experience somehow. So, um, for instance, just this morning, I went to the supermarket and an old black gentleman came up to me who worked at the supermarket that I was buying groceries for. I happened to have two of the children that I look after. One's my daughter, and the other one is her half sister. She, both of those children were in the car. He offered to take the cart instead of me rolling it all the way over to where the cart goes, because I don't leave the fucking cart just sitting in the parking lot. Um, and it struck me, and then explaining it to my daughter, I guess, is really what sort of caused me to have an emotional reaction. I'm not sure if that was it or not, but that's when I had the emotional reaction. It's when I was reflecting upon it, I guess, that during the explanation of what was going on there, because she just, you were talking to someone. I talk to people. Yes, that's what adults or just generally people do. And I explained to her that he did something of an act of kindness to me, and for some reason, it elicited an emotional response. Like I sort of started crying, or I audibly changed the tone of my voice to such a degree that my daughter noticed and told me to stop crying. Um, which uh, is something that I tell her to do. I say, "All right, calm down, stop crying. It's okay. There's no reason to cry." And so she was kind of doing the same thing for me, kind of consoling me, which helped. It did help. Now, granted, we should cry. I think that it's a healthy response. It's something that we hold inside, and psychologically speaking, is unhealthy if we hold those emotions inside for too long. Perhaps that's what I've been doing. I don't know. Either way, I tend to be pretty metacognitive and aware of myself, so this is kind of it was just an interesting experience. Um, I guess it's because anytime, especially in the days that we're living in, that you witness an act of kindness, it means more than previously, than it did even a couple of years ago. People are so afraid of each other now because they think that they're going to die from human contact, that even a small act of kindness, even a small reaching out can mean a lot, even to someone like me who generally tends to have a pretty thick skin. Then again, maybe it's because of all the other background shit that's going on in my life that, I can't really deal with. I can't really, the only thing I can do is power through and move on from them. So, um, that was something that I thought would be worth sharing. And I want to be more actively kind. If I value it in other people, I want to be able to share whatever kind of kindness that I can with others. Of course, I've been so preoccupied over the past decade, really 13 years, it's been, or perhaps longer, with the greatest act of kindness that I can think of, which is to actively pursue the emancipation of humanity from what can only be called the predatory ruling slash elite. I don't really consider them to be elite. They're not better than someone like myself or others who are free-thinking individuals, but people who are basically of the same lineage that have been in control of the governing powers since time immemorial, honestly. The Klaus Schwabs of the world, the Rothschilds of the world, Rockefellers of the world. These people are something to be revered and fought against. We should respect them in that they have power and the ability to wield it, but they lack humanity in a lot of ways. They lack something of a soul, it seems, because they have the capacity to view other human beings as like a lesser species than they are. And the only proof that they have for such a claim is the fact that they have boatloads of money and they've been able to gain on the system that their ancestors had sort of forged. And if not their ancestors, then still a very bloody and inhumane lineage of people requesting that the rest of us fight in their wars, despite the fact that they won't fight their own wars. More often than not. I mean, let's go back to the, early days, and I'm sure there were warrior kings and such, but sure as hell ain't happening now, right? Let's see the Queen of England with a flail and smash someone's skull in a bloody conflict. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So I've been so preoccupied with the emancipation of humanity from this this power struggle, from this evil, that I've sort of forgotten about the small acts of kindness. I've focused on the big acts of kindness so much that I've forgotten about the small. And it is through the small acts of kindness oh. It's through the small acts of kindness that the larger acts of kindness seem possible or relatable. Small acts of love and kindness. And truly, in this time, damn, oh my goodness, in this time, the small acts of kindness are perhaps the most important. And it's because of this that I've been looking forward to sharing more and more of what I consider to be the hope for the future. The hope that I view for the future is a world rooted not in war or economics or government, for that matter, but in the shared education of truth and wisdom. That the future, if we are going to have any at all, has to be based in education, and you have to take that seriously. We can't have a future if the world is bent on war against itself. We can't have a future if it's planned for us by the same powers that created the world that we live in today. I mean, think about it. You have the World Economic Forum, who is basically backed and personed by the very same powers and individuals or families that created the world that we live in today, and that created the world that we live in today. It's the same people. The same people that have always been telling us they are going to create a better world, and who have inevitably created worse conditions in certain ways. You've brought us industry, but with it pollution and poverty. With the progress that these lineages promise to create, they bring with them plagues and famines. We've designed the world. I say we, but they have designed the world that we live in such a way that we've destroyed much of it. Much of the natural world has been destroyed. And for what? Really, it is a tragedy, history. And I think now of the book Tragedy and Hope by Carol Quigley and what it had to say. Much of what it had to say is essentially that the powers that be that have created the world that we live in have done so in a far from meritocratic way. They've done so because they believed themselves to be the superior influence or power in the world, and so they deserve to have the right, they deserve to have the power to claim the world as their own. Unfortunately for us, that means basically we have no control over our own destiny. In all actuality, they view the world to be theirs, and that we are simply living in it. It's their world and we're living in it. You know that old phrase, but it's quite literal and real for these people. We are but tools in their game, pawns. And they control the education system, so they influence those who come out of it. Those who are not apt for the higher echelon roles simply get funneled into one of the other, into the military or into some other form of government job. And if they can't do that, then prison, so they can be slaves. And of course, the thing that people don't understand, I think, is that the ruling class, viewing themselves as such, as a different species from the rest of us, and designing the laws under which we live, you think that the Black African was the last slave, that they freed all the slaves. that the Emancipation Proclamation was legitimate and created a world where there were no more slaves, that the 14th Amendment, 13th and 14th Amendment were the keys to liberating all people. But in actuality, they were the keys to creating a world where anyone can be a slave. It has nothing to do with the color of your skin. It has to do with the class that you happen to be born into. They bring in all of the drugs through the CIA, you see. They want you to be hooked on these drugs so that you can be funneled into the police system, so that you can be funneled into their justice system, so that you can be funneled into their slavery system, so that you can work for them for virtually nothing while you are provided for, of course, in a communistic style system where you don't actually get any kind of therapy or any kind of reform. They're not trying to reform you. They're trying to reform you from a human into a homunculus. Just a lump of clay for them to mold and turn you into some kind of a creature that they can use as a slave. Do their bidding for the predetermined amount of time, perhaps. Some of the people on death row or that are lifers, they don't have that luxury. But the fact of the matter is, the prison system is basically a system to enslave an immense amount of people. And the reality is, we have more slaves in the United States here than there ever were slaves during the colonial or revolutionary period. Basically, during the time of the height of slavery, there weren't as many black people in prison. There was more black people in prison, basically enslaved, than there ever were slaves during the height of slavery. And it says a lot. And that's just the black population in prison. That's not to say that there aren't many, many white people who are also enslaved, or Asian people for that matter, or Mexican people, whatever, or, Hispanic people. The reality is, it doesn't matter. It's a universal slavery based on class, based on your station in life. Because they don't view you or I as equal or human compared to themselves. They view you and myself as useless eaters. I mean, let's face it, the Queen of England is a perfect, or just the royal family in general, is a perfect typification of this kind of psychology. They basically are and have been propped up as such by their own population as a higher species of human. And people like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, who are not royalty by any means in terms of the technicalities involved, but who happen to have an immense wealth that transcends in a lot of ways the wealth of the royal family. People like that, they equally view themselves as a separate sort of species from you and I. I don't know what the technical term would be. What does it be like? Homo oppressus. Oh shit, that's brilliant. God damn it. Homo oppressus, okay? Homo oppressus. Yes, we'll call it Homo oppressus. There's Homo sapiens, and then there's Homo oppressus, okay? So the Homo oppressus are far more inclined to build such a structure and have all the means to do so. And our unwillingness to violence against such a, well, first of all, they're very obscure, so it's not exactly something that the average person is going to know about. The Rothschilds being one of the more, they're not on the Forbes top 500. because they don't want to be. They don't wish to be in any of those kinds of numbers or lists. But their wealth is certainly greater than any of those people on the list, for sure. So, Homo oppressus has created a situation where now we all have to wear masks. Isn't that wonderful? Because of a virus that kills 0.03% or whatever it is. Or no, it's 4% of the people that have died were solely because of the disease caused by the virus, whereas 94% or 96% were obese or had diabetes. I mean, at face value, anybody who advocates for lowering the population or population control, you'd think that they would be in favor of this, especially since those people who are affected have no economic value, as it were. And I'm saying that as in a sociopathic way because, let's face it, you're talking about people who are sociopaths who want to convince you that they are not, and their world, you have to look at the fruits. You have to look at the fruits, okay? Look at the fruits of what has happened here. The world that we live in now, different from a year or two ago, is such that we don't really have a freedom like we had. Everything is kind of dictated to us. You don't have the freedom to have bodily autonomy. Soon enough, it will be a mandate that everyone has to get a vaccine in order to function in society, and it will be such a heavily enforced code that we're going to start having certifications for whether you've got one or not. Now, I mean, of course you have to have that. Of course you have to have certification. Of course you have to be able to verify that you've gotten a vaccine when, in all actuality, the disease doesn't really kill anybody. Not many people. I mean, the average person is not going to be very harmed by this. The interesting part about it is that, if you look at it, if this is in fact a natural virus and wasn't created in a lab in Fort Detrick and then moved to a lab in Wuhan in order to create plausible deniability, then more than likely this is something of a natural culling. And it should be embraced as such. You liberal people who think that you're so, ideological, why don't you have a little bit of consistency about it? If you believe the population of the world is way too big, then why aren't you, and that, healthy living is the best way to go, why are you so concerned about the lives of diabetics and obese people that honestly have made their choices, have put themselves in their own coffins and nailed 3 of the nails in, and this virus just so happens to be the final nail in the coffin, and yet we're supposed to be unyieldingly compassionate for these people when what we're doing is burning down the house in order to save the television. We're burning down the whole house in order to save some people that are really already on death's door, or something to that effect. I mean, what you're basically doing is extending a few people's lives you're ending life as we know it in order to extend the lives of a lost population of people. This is essentially what nature does. Forests get burned down every once in a while. A fire cleanses the forest when it becomes overpopulated. And it's the same people who claim that the world is overpopulated who are also claiming that no unnecessary death is acceptable. I accept that people will die. Life and death are intertwined. If you cannot accept that death is a part of life, then you do not have a right to tell me how to live mine. And I say this with the utmost compassion and sadness for the people who are going to be affected by this. I don't say it lightly. It's not something that I wish anyone experience. It's not something I don't wish this upon anyone. But the reality is I can't ignore the truth. And I'm not a hypocrite. The world is overpopulated, and there are a lot of unhealthy people. And this should really be a huge eye-opening experience for a lot of people to drop whatever it is, whatever habits they have developed over their lifetime, to change those habits, to improve their health, to make their health improved to the point where they won't be affected by something as mild as this virus. And the fact that the media is so complicit in this propaganda campaign by the World Global Economic Forum or any of the other alphabet soup sort of agencies throughout the world, the CDC, WHO, FDA, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, their project for an ID 2020. All of these different organizations and all of these different interests intertwine in this specific decade because they view this decade as the turning point from the 20th century to the 21st century. We are entering into the 21st century with this sort of a world that we're gradually becoming more and more assimilated into. And I'm here to tell you that resistance is not futile. Resistance is not futile. The Borg will tell you that resistance is futile because they want you to be stricken with fear and to not give resistance at all, to just simply give up before the battle is even fought. And that may well be what a lot of people already have done. Or they don't even view it as a battle. They view it as the battle is against the virus, which is absurd and can't be anything other than propaganda, lie, rhetoric. It's anytime that someone tells you that we have to preserve our democracy when we live in a representative republic is using propaganda to brainwash you. Anytime someone is telling you that we have to fight a war against a microbe is using propaganda techniques to control your mind. It's as simple as that. And what we have to do is share this kind of knowledge, share the knowledge of what we understand about propaganda with the rest of the population. That's what I'm here to do. Now, this video is probably going to take an entire day to upload onto YouTube because I'm doing it through my phone, but I plan to make more videos. I hope that you would share this video and subscribe, but I would also hope that you would, in your own time, investigate, look at the links that I have shared below, and give whatever you can as far as your own mental capacity to these ideas and share them and make a great attempt to actually change the forms to which we are accustomed and to which we are becoming accustomed as we enter the 21st century. At 30 minutes, I'm just going to cut this one to close. This is all improvised, so every one of these videos really is just improvised. So I want to thank you for sticking with me on this, and I wish you the best. Love and appreciation, everybody. Peace.